Welcome to another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time covering Venom 29.7. Hey, Greg. Got the speed draw going. You can see the Doctor's whole group, including the 5 nearly identical harbingers that they got going on. Hey, Vic. And the audience participation question, the reminder is for 29.7. Given that the Doctor reveals she's a potential parahuman, what kind of powers do you think she'd get? As for themes in this chapter, it's hard to like sum up in one word, but there's this ongoing thing where a lot of the characters are like, Scion's an alien, so we have to attack him through alien means. But Tattletale and Taylor, maybe mostly Taylor, I would say, are like, no, he has that human body and is acting out through human, like, stages of emotional development, so clearly, like, we should try and factor that in and use that to our advantage. So, I think the theme of, like, humanity versus alienness of Scion and like leaning into the humanity of the situation has been like building through several of the recent arcs and chapters ever since arc 27, when, you know, Scion had become the main enemy of all of the remaining characters. Yeah. And then, man, this speed drawing all those vials does look like it took forever. I saw that the speed draw this time was one of the longest ones that of any of the arts that I've seen. It's like over 5 minutes long. Let me see. It's 5 minutes and like 26 or 27 seconds. So very tedious vial drawing process for Vic on this one. So, the chapter begins with Taylor and her group sliding down the tunnel that they had hopped in to escape Scion. They're heading down toward the Doctor and all of her remaining bodyguards and assets. So, you know, she's like getting banged around in this stupid tunnel that is very much like uneven and has just sheer drops at some points and all sorts of unfortunate things. And then she is sensing ahead to see what's happening in the room when her companions get in there. And it seems as though Gully was like the last remaining Case 53 who is down at the bottom of the tunnel, like digging, and Cuff Canary and Gully get immediately like stopped, and then Taylor starts getting confused because Lung is also pinned against the wall very easily, which, hard thing to do. Um, and Taylor's second to last, so Golem is still behind her. So she can't fully slow down or anything. She starts using her like bugs to, while she's still in range, to have the crystal that is encasing the Nanothorn knife pulled down so that they can use it. Rachel arrives down into the like scene that Taylor's confused by and is growing her dogs, but when the dogs and Rachel emerge into the room, then it doesn't really, they're not able to help the others. They're just like defeated immediately by what we know, from a few paragraphs later, are the 5 Numberman clones, the 5 Harbingers. It takes Taylor a minute to connect the dots. She does, though. She realizes that that the number boys are actually Harbinger clones, but at first she's like, was Cauldron cloning people to get like more reinforcements and stuff? No, that was Bonesaw. Um. Yeah, the number boys, having their mathematical brain powers, are able to defeat the dogs despite their gigantic size and strength by using all of their like weakest spots. She compares it to when a crocodile or an alligator's mouth is shut, and holding the mouth shut is actually really easy because for all the strength in closing the jaw, it doesn't have a lot of strength in opening. And in this case, it's like the number lad is jumping in, pushing the dog's like legs apart from each other so it can't get a footing. Um, so, we get to see this group who easily overpowered the Vegas Capes get easily overpowered to about the same degree. Um, uh, and then, at the when Taylor has arrived, then she and Golem are the last two to appear on scene. And their group is pretty quickly defeated. As we can see up here, we've got like the 5 number boys, the 2 injured Doormaker and Clairvoyant, Pretender with Alexandria's body, the real number man, the Doctor, Manton clone, and Siberian, and then Gully is also there now. On ostensibly third party that's neither with Taylor nor the Cauldron people. But yeah, I'm not gonna get into the super nitty gritty of the fight because Taylor's team just gets stomped. They don't like get killed off. They're all just being like held in place and like minor injuries and stuff. But yeah, they're just defeated. And then Aisha appears and has a knife at the Doctor's throat. But this doesn't work because a number boy knocks the knife out of her hand with like a thrown object. It is funny when Taylor realizes the number man used to be in the Slaughterhouse 9. Um, she's like, no, couldn't get distracted. I was up against a kid with an analysis power that was off the charts. And yeah, she does try all sorts of things. Like, she tries to use bugs on him, then she tries to pepper spray him. It goes about as well as her fight with Contesso in Arc 24. And Lung is being really reckless here. Lung tries to use flames to destroy the Doctor in retaliation for getting gripped, but then the Manton clone Siberian extends her invulnerability to the Doctor and anyone else who would have gotten flamioed. Let's see here. So yeah. Oh, and they have the Sveta ball, of course. I forgot to mention that Imp had carried the Sveta ball down here with them, so they still have her in the group. And then when they finally get a second because of Aisha's play to try and like stop the fight, Taylor is able to say that Scion's here, and the Doctor, of course, being like classic Cauldron, is like, we don't trust you. We think you're trying to assassinate us. And then she keeps telling them, that Scion's here. And eventually they trust her because it's just like, okay, you might still be lying, but if you are like telling the truth, it's important enough that we treat it like it's true either way. And when she tells them that Sator's dead, then and that his team is dead, then Pretender gets bummed out. Pretender seemingly is not able to use any of Alexandria's mental powers because Taylor calls upon him to basically do the kind of facial reading to make sure she's telling the truth that was done earlier in like Arc 22. But he can't do that. It is funny when Imp says, if it was an assassination attempt, I'd have offed you. The Doctor goes, and you are? And Imp can only sigh, for no one remembers her. And yeah, they decide to make their way even deeper into the complex. They just sort of release all of Taylor's group from being held prisoner. And then they just keep yeah, they always in this section of the book are descending deeper and deeper. There's always more downward to go into the earth. They also just kind of show of strength. The Number Man shows off that even though that Cuff had been trying to secretly form spikes within her costume, like he had noticed, despite them not being visible yet. And boop boop boop. They're binding up Gully's like hands and stuff before taking her with them, but I don't know. At this point, with Scion on their tail, I do think Gully, outside of the influence of the other Case 53s all flipping out, is probably not going to fight them again. So, there's a funny moment where the number man apologizes because he says that the number boy's personalities are based on hearsay alone. He was not that rude as a teen. He was quite a polite young man, in fact. Which I find funny. This is when Florette's crystal arrives with the knife inside, and then they walk into this corridor. They start going down, and this is the scene we're seeing now, I think. There's thousands and thousands of vials, even though these are supposed to be like the final stocks and like reserve of their volatile stuff. A few hundred seem to still have contents in them, and as you can sort of see in the art, when they have contents, they kind of distort the light that's coming through, and when they don't, then they're just a clear vial that you can see through. The doctor's telling them that they've nearly depleted all their stocks because they just started handing out the vials for free in the last few days, ever since Scion revealed his true colors. Taylor likes the sound of the fact that they have volatile vials left, and then the doctor is like, it's not so good because these are the ones that super kill you or turn you into like really weird Case 53s. And then Taylor's like, oof, all right. And she starts looking at some of the named vials: Able, Abattoir, Access, Ace, Aegis, Air, Alchemy, Alias, Alpha, Amaze. And instead of Taylor marveling at how many there are, it's Sveta who's like, "Oh, there's so many." And when Sveta asks about it, all of these were in fact tested on people. Sveta is talking to the doctor, talking about how her life was taken away from her, and she does remember some of it, and she'll have like glimpses of her old life in her dreams, and then she like tries to draw out what she remembers, but because of her body, she like has so much difficulty dealing with that. And the doctor just brushes her off over and over again. She keeps pulling out more like things where she can't remember her original language, and all these different sad facts about Sveta. It is very sad. We're on Sveta's side in this, but the doctor doesn't give a single fuck. You know how she rolls. And when Sveta says, "You took me to the doctor," then the doctor's like super pedantic about it, and she's like, "Well, I didn't take you. I sent others to do it." And it's like, you fucking idiot. I didn't mean that you literally showed up. And then Sveta is even saying like, you used other Case 53s against us, so you're not only turning them into these monsters, but then taking advantage of them on top of that. And Sveta admits that on most days she would have rather been killed in her original world than to continue to be alive as her current form. And then, she's getting more and more agitated and like donking around inside of the sphere that's holding her. Um, the doctor's like, "You're distracting me from the matter at hand of Scion. I don't have time for this." And Sveta's still trying to get any sort of emotional response out of the doctor, to which she receives none. The doctor says, "I understand. Then damn me, curse me, tell me I will go to hell for what I did. At the end of this, I will face any and all punishment that I'm due, alive or dead. For now, we see our way through this." And it is very practical in this moment. But in the long years that have led up to this point, that's when she should have been doing the reflecting. Sveta keeps talking about different Case 53s and all the like bullshit they have to deal with. She brings up Gully and Weld and Gentle Giant, and then the doctor the doctor's like, "I don't have time for this. Do you want an apology? You said you don't want words. Would a gesture do? Should I take a scalpel to my face, carve myself up so I could experience what you have?" And then Sveta's like, "You carving yourself up wouldn't be good enough." And part of it is because she would die in a few minutes when Scion arrived. And they've been feeling this torturous existence for years. The doctor's like, "What do you even want from me?" Sveta's asking, she's like, "Do you remember my name? Since I was important enough to be given a name aside from just a number, do you remember what it was?" And the doctor does not know. Sveta even like tells her that her name starts with an S, so she's given her a hint. The hint does not work. Vic says, "This is just a remake of the school meeting scene." It really is. I hadn't thought about that. And it's funny you bring that up. I just read the school meeting scene. Vic knows this. The audience does not necessarily know this. I have been reading Worm aloud to someone who hasn't read it because they're fine listening to me read it aloud, but they don't like standard audiobooks. So, obviously, my path is set. I will be reading the entire book to this person. But yeah, we just 2 days ago read the school meeting scene. Man, what like a perfect scene to get you aligned with a character. Just yeah, dealing with someone like the doctor or like the principal of Winslow High who just, and in the case of the principal, she vaguely cares in a way that the doctor really doesn't, but is basically useless, and similarly to the doctor is just like, "Oh, there's too much going on. I don't have time to help you." Sveta gets mad when she thinks that the number man is going to say her name, because she's like, "Well, you remember because you know goddamn everything, so shut the fuck up." And then instead the number man's like, "No, I was trying to bring up that Scion hath arrived." And they see the golden light. They see Scion. I actually I really like the formatting on a lot of the chapters. I think Wildbow does a lot with how long the paragraphs are and stuff. And in this moment, we get very clipped, like staccato style paragraphs, just one or two lines depending. It's we stop turning. A golden light at the end of the entrance to the corridor. A figure stood in the middle of it, darker in contrast to the light surrounding it. And then just a single word on its own. Scion. He advanced on foot, one step, then another. His eyes moved to the vials. He touched one, gentle, almost inquisitive. Yeah, and it just sort of goes on like that for like half a page of really short clipped paragraphs. And I like that. In this tense moment. But yeah, then Scion like grabs a vial, and even though they're like held in place by wires, his hands of course just kind of move through and destroy the metal wires holding it in place. Golem tries to ask, he says, "What are they? The vials?" And the number man just says, "Powers." And it's like, I think Golem understood that much, but he wanted to know more of like what the source was. And we'll learn from the next chapter that they basically like lop off and grind up parts of the physical body of the other entity, the thinker entity, which the body still exists from when Contessa had stabbed the sort of main avatar of the thinker in that first moment when she was vulnerable. But that will be addressed next chapter. But yeah, Scion's looking around. He's really distracted by these vials. He's just looking at them. Doesn't really know what's going on. He's like, oh man, this sucks. That's right. Scion, in his mind, talks like, a kid. He's just like, oh, I hate everything. Taylor's like trying to figure out what to do. She's not sure how to escape given how close Scion is. But several of their options are not available to them. Gully and Doormaker are both unconscious. Taylor asks the doctor if she has powers, and the doctor says that she has Corona Palencia, but she has never had a trigger event. And then she doesn't want to take a dose because when you have a Corona Palencia already, then more can go wrong from the Cauldron Vial style trigger event. Sveta, of course, mentions, you were fine doing it to others. Then the doctor is saying how she wanted to leave the door open to a natural trigger event, and also that she might want to take Vial at a crucial juncture. And Lum gets a comedy line here, too. I mean, he's being serious, but it's like funny to me, the audience. I believe this would be a good time. Canary, both to point out that something's happening and to remind us she's in the scene, is like, Scion's not moving. And then Number Man is like, yeah, compared to looking at all those vials, he really doesn't care about a couple parahumans standing around. Taylor is like trying to figure out what they can do like what kind of power would be helpful for the doctor to get through a vial, and she's like, a healing power. Um, and the doctor is like, when there are healing powers, it's like an accident. It's other powers that are attempting to do other things that might have like the side benefit of healing. Then Taylor says she should get a tinker power, and then Cuff points out that they don't have time for a tinker power to do anything, and then Taylor's like, yeah, but it might get us out of this situation. We'll see. And then the doctor's like, I can't just take a vial right here, because if it makes me have a trigger event, then all of you will get knocked out. And then Rachel points out that they could all hop on to the dogs and have the dogs keep moving them down the corridor. But the doctor, of course, points out that a trigger event could also, like, grab Scion's attention, and then he would actually kill them instead of just being distracted. And, the doctor wants to get at least 1,000 feet away from Scion. So they continue trying to move down the corridor. They sick the Siberian on Scion. I think it's like interesting here because when the Siberian is moving through Scion, it is theoretically destroying all of the parts of him that it's touching, but they can't even tell because, as shown in previous chapters to us, the audience, he's healing so quickly that even when mass portions of his body are being destroyed, it's just not even visible. Boop, 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 boop. Taylor's got a bunch of bugs left behind so she can try and watch the fight. Scion drops the first vial that he had been holding, which was full, and he picks up another one. Presumably, he's only focused on the full vials. I don't think that he's even noticing the empty vials. Unimportant. And so Scion goes from walking around, which I don't know if we had ever seen him really do that before, because he always flies everywhere, and he starts floating about again, because that's his normal way of moving. It's floating. The doctor has one of what are sort of three. She says she was trying to find these specific vials, and that there's 3 left. They have some sort of foreign agent in them, and this is what gave them capes like Eidolon. Again, we, the audience, sort of know more than any of the characters in the scene. We know that the foreign agent that they don't know how to explain is the third entity's crystals. When the Thinker and Abaddon had sort of crunched into each other to exchange information, lots of crystals were exchanged in each direction. So these are the, like, Abaddon powers. The doctor says that she needs to dilute this with balance formula, otherwise there's just no chance it'll work. They put in some balance formula. They start using, what do you call them, a centrifuge mixer kind of thing. And Sveta, is continuing to berate the doctor. And then you know, a little bit. Because the doctor calls her deviants like our friend in the ball here. Um, that's how I always refer to Sveta, our friend in the ball. And she's explaining that deviants like Sveta are rare, but the extreme deviants are even rarer. Golem's asking, like, what the deal is. He says, why? About some of this stuff, and the doctor just doesn't address him. So the machine is, I guess it's not a centrifuge. It's like a paint shaker. But it is speed shaking this so that the balance formula is mixed in. I do find this funny. Taylor says, he's floating down the hallway, knocking the vials to the ground. So I sort of imagine him just sort of one hand out, like, bumping individual vials onto the ground. Very petty for someone with Scion's vast array of powers. Greg says, it's actually just a blender for making entity smoothies. Yeah, definitely. You need to drink an entity smoothie every day, otherwise your powers will fade. Like Eidolon. The doctor does say to Taylor in a minute that, like, giving a vial to someone who already has powers won't do anything. And it's not like I think that giving Taylor a vial would change her powers in a meaningful way, but we do know that Eidolon was like slurping down vials to keep his powers fed. I don't know if that's only because of the fact that he can, like, access living powers, or if the vials themselves can, like, fuel any powers. If I had, like, if I had an interview with Wildbow where I could ask unlimited amounts of, like, ridiculous questions about the setting and stuff, that would be one of my many questions, is like, so can anyone drink a cauldron vial to sort of refuel their power, or is that just Eidolon? And when the balance formula is brought up enough times, Taylor finally asks what the balance formula is, and it's supposed to be like the power or power set that the entities use to make their bodies, like, human and stuff. And we have seen someone who has drank only the balance formula, which is Oliver. We know that Oliver's face is the face of someone who has been entityized and kind of just all whose power does is slightly alter him to change him to kind of look hot or whatever. Which I find very funny. It's like, what's your power do? It makes me super hot. Anything else? Nope. Any side powers? Nope. Can you control how you change your face? Nope. Just a gradual process that happens to me day by day. And then Golem's trying to ask, like, so you can collect powers? Like how does that work? And the doctor doesn't really answer. She says, in a sense. Taylor is saying why they, like, she's finally saying why they came here because the doctor is, like, asking them about it. And she says that she wants, like, insights, information, and Doormaker. Doormaker is still unconscious and being carried by some number boys. Apparently the doctor had been hoping that Doormaker and Konsu could work together to have like a mobile force that would be able to pursue and pressure Scion. She describes it as a last measure. Taylor, when she mentions that they had a lot of plans, the doctor's like, well, we can either spend our time with me telling you about my plans, or you can ask about whatever you were really wanting to ask about. And then Taylor's like, second trigger event. I want it. I need it. Gimme, gimme, gimme. And then the doctor is like, well, that isn't really, like, while a second trigger event may be tantalizing, it's not actually going to help you, probably. And we can't force it. Because whenever we tried to force it in the past, we would have to use Contessa to force the situation. And she sort of explains a bit more about what second trigger events are. And how when they happen, they often take away some of the safeguards that had been in place through the Manton effect to stop the parahuman from harming themselves. And part of the second trigger is that the power itself, like the agent or the crystal, whatever, reaches out to physically proximate parahumans and comes up with new stuff it can do based on who's around, kind of, and communicating with those others. And oftentimes the second trigger exists to try to save the host, because the powers don't want the parahumans to die. They want the parahumans to fight. And as we do already basically know, the second trigger events generally mimic or mirror the original trigger event in some way. They talk about how because they use Contessa to make the second trigger events, they are very expensive for the clients, and so most clients who want a second trigger don't end up getting the funds together. They die in the attempt to get the funds. And Numberman quite aptly describes this as a catch-22, because either you're powerful enough to not if you're powerful enough to get the funds to get the second trigger event, then you don't need a second trigger event. If you need one, you can't muster the funds because you're not powerful enough, typically. Greg says, it would have been funny if the doctor had shoved Taylor into a locker, though. Get in there, nerd! Just shoves her in. Yeah. And when Golem asks why they didn't pursue the second trigger research more, then the response is essentially that even though it takes away some of the restrictions on a power, they need powers with no restrictions, like the foreign entity, like the Abaddon powers, basically. And that Eidolon was one of their only examples of someone with no restrictions that didn't get crippling mental, psychological, emotional, or physical deviations. Seemingly, the paint mixer is done because the doctor says that they should go. Manton is able to confirm that Scion is still in the previous corridor, just looking at vials and stuff. Apparently, the remaining foreign powers they have are not very useful. There's like a defensive power, a power that takes over another parahuman with your brain when you die. It's like a reverse Butcher, or well, I guess it's like very similar to Butcher's power, but it doesn't. It like overwrites the person instead of just jumping that power to join them and their like full power set. It like overwrites their brain, and the parahuman who has it takes over. They don't say, but I don't know if they would retain the power to keep overwriting and controlling other parahumans when they die, or if that power would go away the first time it was used, like a one-shot. But the doctor is going to take the final vial of the 3 that has, she says it should have attack or mover capabilities, or both. This is when they start asking about, like, what if someone who already had powers were to drink a vial, and the doctor says you might as well drink water for much the same effect as the vials. So they're like, damn. And the doctor is able to cut to the chase that Taylor wants to either increase her powers or the powers of everyone here. And they continue to descend further into the facility. They want to get to that 1,000-foot mark and then have the doctor attempt to drink this vial and see what happens. The Siberian is no longer standing guard, but like actually fighting. And I had sort of mentioned it earlier. This is when it happens, and I like this description too. The Siberian cleaved deep. The way her body intersected Scion, it was like ghosts fighting. And Taylor is able to surmise, based on what she learned from Tattletale, that the Siberian is probably doing like massive, horrific amounts of damage to Scion, but he seemingly doesn't care. Taylor sort of updates Manton on his tactics. Instead of like clawing at Scion or whatever, or like jumping through him, then the Siberian is just going to try to perfectly stand in the same place as him to damage as much of him as possible. Just continuously, destroy all of the flesh that's filling in. And the Number Man and the Doctor get out some sort of tinker doohickey that they use to scan various parahumans here. They're getting to a point where it's like almost a dead end. They describe it as the last room, lowest room in the complex. And so, yeah, the Number Man is waving this device at various people. While this is happening, the Siberian is standing directly in place with Scion, and Taylor notices that Scion doesn't care about all the damage he's sustaining. This is when the doctor says he's alien. he doesn't have human feelings. And then Number Man says, he's a force of nature. And then Taylor just like directly refutes them. No, human feelings are why he's a danger. Without them, he'd be some nebulous threat 300 years in the future. But he's lashing out, trying to find himself, and that's why he's dangerous. And then the Doctor refutes this, refutes the other direction, and it's just like, he's alien, above all else, abstract. It's through alien, abstract methods we'll defeat him, if it's even possible. Lung and the others are like, we can't get this door open. And then the Number Man is still lamenting the fact that he was not allowed to design this place. But the Doctor's like, you were too new, we didn't trust you. Which is fair, because he used to be in the original Slaughterhouse 9. Not a good starting place. But, he's fine with it. He's like, yeah, that makes sense. He just nods. Pretender / Alexandria hands off Gully to Lung. And then, Alexandria, with the Alexandria strength, starts trying to push open the door that is stuck. And then the Number Man's like, don't do that. It's going to cave in on us. And then Lung's like, I don't give a fuck if it caves in on us. Stand back while I push through. Golem's like, it's not going to be fast enough for you to burrow your way through, Lung. And then the Doctor looks down at the vial that she's about to take. Taylor says, if we're going to win this, I want it to be because of our strength, not an abstract one. And I know that sounds corny. The Number Man says, a nice sentiment, but I'm afraid that power you're digging for is out of your reach, Weaver. Or it's already in your reach. You can't have a second trigger because you already had one. And then Taylor's like, oh. And then the Number Man describes that she had 2 trigger events in rapid succession. I've always taken this to mean that she had her second trigger event either while still in the locker or while she was in the hospital. And then that is what allowed her to, actually control the bugs and to shut out their signals. I'm not sure without the second trigger event that she would have been able to, shut out all the bug information like she did at the outside of the book, etc. So, when she can't have another trigger event, then Imp apologizes to her. Imp just says, I'm sorry. Which I appreciate. Aisha looking out for sad Taylor. Who else is going to do it if not Aisha? Certainly Taylor will not look out for herself. And then Taylor realizes that she was staking all her hopes on this, even though she had promised herself that she wouldn't. The Doctor seems like she's finally about to take the vial. She removes the stopper from the top. And then Manton is like, he took out Siberian. He finally struck back, and then he's able to have a Siberian with them. Which is good, because Siberian's really good at burrowing through walls quickly. And then Scion, he starts looking around at the vials again. He reaches out his hand, and then kablam! He flares out golden light. And just like a split second before the Doctor is able to take the vial and get a power, then all of the vials, including the one in her hand, they shatter. And then Taylor says her bugs were swamped by all the glass that's raining down, the glass and fluids. Scion begins moving again. All the lights are out now too, because all the lights shattered. So Lung is using flames to for the group to see, and the doctor has like a messed up bloody hand and like cuts on her throat because she had put the vial up to herself and then it exploded. Much as though Shatterbird had been here. When she's asked if she drank any, then she only drank a small amount, and Taylor's like thinking, will she get a power? Will she get a partial power? A distorted one? And then we, the audience, obviously remember the whole echidna business and how dangerous it can be to drink a portion of a vial. But seemingly this did not induce any trigger event because they don't get knocked out or anything. And we know that when Noelle had her trigger event, it wasn't that she didn't have any, it's that it went on and kept being like a partial and kept trying to complete the process, but it couldn't. And Aisha realizes that the sphere holding Sveta is all cracked and fractured and stuff. And then Taylor finally brings out the crystal that's got the knife inside and has Lung crunch it to get through to the knife. When he does this, it actually like shears away part of his hand, but he's at a point where he has enough regeneration that it barely matters. Taylor turns off the disintegration effect, turns it back on again, because you got to turn it off and turn it back on again. That's all technology. It seemingly is having problems because it takes too long to manifest the nanothorn. It takes a full 4 seconds. My word, 0.3 seconds longer than it's supposed to take. And then Scion appears at the top of the stairs so they can see him. They can't run away. Taylor starts grasping at straws. She's like, a third trigger event. And the doctor's like, no. And then Taylor says, there has to be a way. You have the power you have, nothing more. And then Aisha's like, hey, your power isn't the only one that's shit in this circumstance. Then, Sveta's bucking around inside the orb, and then it finally breaks. And when she is out, she tries to focus all her attention on Scion. Her tendrils start going to him. She says, it's him and me. We're the only people here. Taylor's friends are disappearing into the tunnel ahead. They're going forward now. And then Sveta, unfortunately, does not have as much control as she would like. And she does have to pick a second person for her tendrils to focus on. They're not going to just go to Scion. And so she grabs the doctor, and it ultra kills the doctor in seconds. First, her hands are destroyed. Then her midsection is all squish slashed. That's right, squish slashed. And then Sveta says that she had to pick someone, and the doctor was the best choice. And then Sveta is described, it says, Sveta coiled around the doctor, burying the woman beneath overlapping tendrils, until there was a cocoon and a girl's face curled up on the stairs, blood pooled beneath them. Taylor's trying to form swarm decoys because Scion is still slowly floating toward them. It does not do anything. He just moves past them. Oh, I guess it says he walked past them. I guess he's back to walking. He's being very inconsistent. This Scion fellow. Taylor tries, much as when Taylor went one-on-one with Leviathan in melee combat, she's like, hold my beer past Taylor. And then she goes one-on-one with Scion in like melee combat, and she slashes him with the knife, and she says, "Smoke rose, billowing in quantities I couldn't have imagined." It says that he pushes her aside, which it's crazy that he does this without hurting her. But it doesn't matter that he didn't hurt her because as this unfortunate moment happens, Taylor, without thinking about it, tries to reach out to Sveta. She touches her face, and well, Sveta's tendrils decide that it's time to move from the doctor to the next person, and Taylor's newly replaced arm gets wrapped up by two tentacles, and it completely destroys the arm and hand. And I really like this line. I think it's like one of the best moments in the book. She goes, "I just got a new one," I thought, almost dazed. Like, I find that line so funny every time. I love it. Anyway, it says, that Scion moves through past them to the door. And then Sveta does manage to not ultra kill Taylor. She grabs Taylor and then like flings both of them forward at a speed at which Taylor has to use her flight pack to keep them from getting to keep herself from becoming a smear on the wall. But lucky for her, Sveta has put herself between Taylor and the wall, so she receives the brunt of the impact. Sveta's like crazy durable. And then this is when, through Sveta's sort of arms webbing out and grabbing everything, the ceiling of the hallway they had been in collapses. They're in the final chamber, the one that there is no further one. And then Taylor realizes, she goes, "The dust settled, and I saw what Scion had come for, his partner." So yeah. That's the end. We see that this final and most deepest chamber in the Cauldron facility is just the location where they had stored the ridiculous expansive body of the like thinker entity who was newly forming and had the like garden of flesh or whatever, as described in Contessa's flashbacks. Greg says, very nerve of them. It is. This is like so similar to how the lowest chamber of the Nerve headquarters has what is it? It's the third angel down there. Or is it Lilith? Whichever. They have an important entity who all the other angels are trying to reach in the Nerve headquarters, who is stuck there by the Lance of Longinus. Luckily, in this case, Scion reaching the other entity does not cause third impact like at the end of Ava. But you know, it's not ideal because Taylor's stuck in this room with him, and she doesn't like the guy. Um, Final chapter thoughts. I really, really like this one. Between some of the dialogue, some of the like funny things, like not funny to Taylor, but funny to us, the audience. Things that happen. Um, uh, the them like ending in this like room with the thinker entity's body, I think is a really like compelling ending point, great cliffhanger. Wildbow's the master of the cliffhanger every chapter kind of style. Um yeah, this one's great. Part of why Arc 29 is up there in contention for me as the best arc. I know I've said it before, but for me it's like 22, 29, and 30 are all like they it varies for me which one's the true peak, but one of those three is clearly the best one. As for arc stuff, yeah, I think that this is just a great continuation of the arc. There's a little bit of a lull, but obviously the tension is like ever present because Scion is hot on their heels, despite moving slowly. He is completely implacable. Nothing they've done, despite destroying mass amounts of his flesh, perhaps with the Siberian, nothing he's done, or nothing they've done, has slowed him down whatsoever. It's like a horror movie. It's like It Follows, actually, where this being that will kill you slowly moves toward you. um. Moving on to the characters. Oh yeah. So I was gonna start with the 5 Harbingers and the Number Man. It's like interesting that the Number Man specifically is calling out that the clones are different from him, and he seems like disappointed in them. And like it seems as though he feels they're giving him a bad name, which I also find funny. He's basically like, I was way cooler than them at the time. And the reason there's only 5 instead of 8 Harbingers is because the Number Man and Contessa shot 3 of them in the face. But I bet the Number Man wishes he had shot all 8 of them in the face. The Doctor, large and in charge. She has no pushback from any of her minions. They're all following her orders. They still look to her as the leader. It's funny how like much pushback she gives to taking a vial, as though this were not like the final scene. Oh, something weird happened with the stream, but I'm going to... Oh, a lot of visual effects. I'm gonna just hope that it hasn't all broken down and that I'm still sending out. I've been having a lot of technical difficulties lately. Okay, yep. Firefox crashed and stuff, but the stream did not go down. OBS endures. Rock and roll. So... Yeah, I think the Doctor, despite getting ultra killed this chapter, this is one of her best chapters. And you know what? I don't think I hate her as much as I'm supposed to. I do think she's an idiot, and that she squandered a lot of stuff for like Cauldron by like being overly cautious. But down to her last like act in this thing, she was like had to be convinced over and over again to actually like um do the damn thing and like use her resources. She's like a RPG player, where they'll have like 99 elixirs and they'll be in the last battle and they still won't use an elixir, and it's like, bro, what are you doing? Why aren't you using the elixirs? There aren't any fights after this. This is the final fight. And she's like, no. Um, so, it is very funny. I think that that sort of informs my idea of what her powers might be. Um, I think that she would get some sort of. Well, I'll talk about it in a minute. When we're on the audience participation, but I think that her like ultra cautiousness and being like overly prepared and unwilling to use resources would factor directly into her power, because it seems to be one of her core like traits. Then we got Pretender. Pretender's bummed out. He's like, "Oh no, my boyfriend Satyr got killed. I'm sad now." Um we don't get that much characterization from him, but I think a lot is implied with what little we do get, because we know him from other chapters. The Manton clone, I thought it was interesting. I didn't mention it as it was happening in the chapter, but Taylor has a moment where she doesn't feel like his behavior lines up with the actual Manton that she saw back in like arc 14, because Manton like kisses the Siberian on the forehead or whatever, and she's just like, this seems more like Bonesaw reaching and like kind of failing to put together the right personality, much as with the Harbingers. So, that's just another interesting tidbit, is that even though he's a literal clone with like implanted memories, then he still is different enough for it to be noticeable by someone who knew him as little as Taylor did. I'm also not 100% sure if Bonesaw was fully trying to copy the personalities for real, or if she wanted to take artistic license with it. I got the impression in her chapter that she was doing her best to directly copy them, but she didn't do a very good job. Gully, there are no Gully parts. Gully is unconscious the whole time. Although I like that Sveta still talks about Gully as like one of her allies, even though there was the split and they turned on each other. It kind of shows how Sveta thinks, and that she's still in the headspace of like being aligned with all the other stuff. Greg says Bonesaw and the Siberian had a different relationship than most others. I think she was copying what she knew. Yeah, that makes sense. Because she didn't. Manton did reveal himself to her, but only for a short while, and we don't know how stilted he was when he was directly in their company. We also don't know, like, for all we know, he went back to only interacting with them with the Siberian like before. Canary only gets a few lines, is keeping quiet during these important moments. sadly barely characterized in these in this particular chapter, but it's very dense with stuff. The Wildbow didn't really have time to give Canary much to do. And just like logically, there's not a lot for her to do right now. Lung, we get like a classic perfect Lung moment where where the situation calls for restraint, and he instead tries to burn the person they're there to save. Classic Lung. And when like it seems as though the roof will collapse, he's just like, I don't care about that. I'm gonna push through here. You guys can get collapsed on for all I care. Funny classic Lung. And Cuff doesn't do that much this chapter either. I like that there's a moment where she tries to pull like a very Taylor-like move, making like hidden spikes and such, but it doesn't even though it doesn't pay off, I still just think it's great that you can see she's gone from being like not only like timid in the start of the behemoth fight in arc 24, but in arc 25 during the sort of during the time skip ish stuff, when we just see a few scenes all like months apart, Cuff did not seem very hardcore as a cape. She seemed like just not ready for stuff. And the fact that she's going up against like a crew of some of the strongest parahumans out there, and she's pulling these little tricks and stuff, or at least attempting to. We've seen Cuff come a long way. I think her first name is like Ava, but I never remember to look. Golem, our boy Theo, he is... I think he's asking important questions even though he's brushed off. Like when he asks what the vials are and he's told that they're powers, what he's really asking is, where do you get these vials? How did you produce them? To which he will get answers in a minute, despite them not wanting to answer him. I just realized how short in terms of direct timescale this chapter is. It's got to take place in like less than 10 total minutes because like Scion is slow after them. And there's like a bit of walking, a bit of waiting, but it's mostly just a quick conversation. I wonder if I timed out like just the lines of dialogue about how long it would be. I don't know. But yeah, Golem and Cuff both keeping their head on straight despite the like extreme nature of their circumstances. Rachel doesn't do that much, but she does help push back on the doctor, being like, I can't take a vial because of these 10 different reasons. Backing up Taylor. Gets kicked by a number lad. Those douche bags. Aisha pulling some classic Aisha stuff, but also, you know, as we've noticed for a while now, or as I've noticed at least, Aisha is very sympathetic to Taylor and doesn't really like try to clown on Taylor the way that she'll clown on like literally anyone else. She, I think, has like a deep respect for Taylor, despite never saying it directly to her. She could never. Sveta, I put Sveta super deep into it in here. Sveta gets tons of characterization. Her conversation with the doctor, I think, is like really good. If you somehow weren't already on side with Sveta, you get another chance to hop aboard, and become a fan. The fact that she was in the crew that turned on the other Case 53s to defend the Doctor, but then also is the one to accidentally ultra kill the Doctor, it's kind of funny. Others will blame her for having tried to steal their revenge away from them, but I really do think that that it was like focus down the Doctor or accidentally rip apart every other parahuman in the scene. Yeah, really gave us a little more of that Sveta backstory so that we could glom onto her emotionally. Then Taylor, Taylor is pretty desperate, and she is devastated by the news that not only has she had a second trigger event, but a third is not possible. She's like grasping at every straw. Really, as she said last chapter, trying to find, hoping to find like a chance within a chance. And she never gives up. Holy shit, she's the coolest motherfucker alive. I can't believe that she went into hand-to-hand combat with Scion. Greg says, KS, KS. Yeah, Sveta totally kill stole, and I can't believe she's got such bad manners to kill steal. But yeah, oh my god, Taylor, when she thinks the equivalent of, I just got that hand. It's like a perfect moment. The entire book exists so that I could read that one sentence. It's moments like that when I'm like, Wildbow's fucking brilliant. As though I didn't already think it. It really hits home. And then I hadn't added him as a character until the very end, and I wasn't sure where to put him, but Scion. Scion has, I used to put Scion and the Endbringers into the powers, knowledge, and world building, but Scion has really grown a personality. He has leveled up from blank slate tabula rasa, if you will, to slate with some writing on it, but not much. Yeah, his whole demeanor, like seeing the vials, getting like super distracted, not being able to focus on anything. It really, I think, puts the story in line with what Taylor and Tattletale believe about Scion, and that his emotional personality is more important to engage with than trying to find some alien way to defeat him that they might never find. Yeah, it's surprising to me, in the same way it's surprising to Taylor, that he doesn't care when the Siberian is destroying a bunch of his, like, stored energy or whatever it is that fuels his healing. Because we know from Scion's own chapter that the way that he, like, sees things, it's like, how much power am I expending? And clearly it expends more power to, like, use Contessa's power than it does to, like, heal the flesh. But he's so distracted that he's willing to like let tons and tons of damage happen to him. He's in a really self-destructive mode right now. And not just self, everyone destructive. But I think this is a good moment to move into the powers, knowledge, and world building. We learn like a fucking lot of stuff about how second trigger events like cannot be moved to third. They can happen almost simultaneously, like happens to Taylor. We already kind of knew from Scion's chapter that Taylor, we didn't have 100% confirmation, but we kind of knew that she was someone who had had a second trigger event, because she is viewed in the same way that Gru is. But like as people with like powers that stand out in particular to Scion when he was looking at the battlefield at the end of Arc 26. But we learn a bunch more. We learn you can't have third trigger events. We learn like that they have doohickeys that they can scan you with that are like Tinker Tech that let you know if someone has had a second. And even to the degree that the number man can tell that it was almost right away after the first for Taylor. So that's like an interesting level of detail that you can read into things. Or that they can, I mean. Like seeing Scion interact with everything was cool. Like seeing the Siberian fight Scion was cool to me. This event, when he destroys all the vials all at once, like a Shatterbird attack, made me realize that his resonance power and like Shatterbird's resonance power are kind of similar. Hers is like really specific and can only do one thing, whereas like we know Scion's got like a huge power package and like suite of different formats of power. But like I do think the core thing is like this like power to cause or stop resonance from happening, and like, which also ties it back to another Cauldron Cape that I can think of, which is Hero is described as having like a power that operates on like different frequencies and stuff, and like you know, I don't know. It's just like interesting, these connections between incredibly powerful Cauldron Capes and like the specific power that Scion decided to like set himself up with. And I think learning that the other entity, this is the first time that we learn that the other entity's body is not only still intact, but also at the bottom of the Cauldron facility. I myself, until this very moment of the book, had always wondered how the Cauldron vials were created. And I really had like a Fry, oh, now I get it type of moment. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, I'm sure I could yammer and yammer all day about how awesome I think it is, but I believe the time has arrived to move on to the audience participation. 29.7, given that the doctor reveals her she's a potential parahuman, what kind of powers do you think she'd get? Vic said, the doctor would get a thinker power with master undertones. It'd have to be annoying for her, though, so maybe something where she doesn't get any abilities, but she can channel abilities to others. Maybe something she has to charge up to use, so has to save it for a select moment. And I totally agree. I think that she would have a power like Exalt's power, where she would constantly be telling herself, like, I can't expend my charge because it takes too long to charge up. I have to wait for the right moment. And of course, she would always miss the right moment. It would be a classic Parahumans comedy of errors where she just can't get it quite right. I haven't thought of the aspect of like her charging up to give other people powers, but that would make sense for her, not only with like the cauldron connection, but like the fact that she, in the way she ends up operating anyway, always has to act through others, and can't take any direct actions for the most part. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting aspect. And yeah, her giving other people powers would just tie it all with a neat bow. Yes. Unfortunately, I could not think up a question in time for 29.8, so I will hopefully have that in the Discord soon-ish, but it'll just happen when I'm able to come up with a question, and I will, as always, remind the audience what the question is at the top of the next episode, so that if you're listening to this in the future, or you're not interfacing with the Discord at all, you will still be able to hear the question and perhaps answer in a comment. Not that that's literally ever happened, but who knows? Someday we might have some Worm fanatic who's just so invested in Worm that they come to this little old stream and watch back through the archives and want to answer all the questions. We can only hope. I'm going to play that old outro music and quickly fire off the end of stream information. So, the song you're hearing is Extinction by our good friend ScarlettXOX. You can find her at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. She insists that now, with her new music setup and her new computer, that she will be streaming this very year. I'd love to see it. So we're all crossing our little fingers. That link, the Discord server link, and all the other links can be found in the stream description, and then the Discord, and then all the ones I'm about to read can be found in the channel description as well. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. If you want to support our good friend Wildbow, who writes all of this work for us. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org, as well as the second complete audiobook by the other group at abaddonproductions.org. They named themselves after the third entity. Yeah, with that, I will let the rest of the song play out. And I will see you guys next time for 29.8.